Okay, so welcome to Cookbook Quality Metrics and You.
And you.
And you. You have a lot of questions, so let's answer the most common first. Who are we? I'm David. I work with DNSimple as their DNSquirrel. You know, I hoard the nuts, I break things, gather up the goodness, and then I make the internet go. Most everywhere on the internet, as you can see, you can find me as only have cans. And that's because I work in a cannery. I only have cans. They're stacked from the floor all the way up to the ceiling. If you need something, I can take care of that for you. That actually wasn't a joke.
It's not. I'm Robb Kidd. I work for Chef as a software developer. I've worked on the supermarket where the cookbook quality metrics are with my colleague Nell Shamrell Harrington. Also on the interwebs, you can find me under the handle Robb Kidd because I steal from children.
That one was good.
All right.
Hopefully.
It's pretty easy.
So, Robb, what are cookbook quality metrics?
I'm super glad you asked because that's the title. They are a completely optional set of metrics to help you, the users, judge the relative reusability of community cookbooks available in the public supermarket.
I'm having trouble hearing you on the back.
Okay, I will talk louder. How's that?
They're also opinionated. We really can't infer quality or define metrics if we aren't willing to take opinions. Because it's opinionated, it won't always apply to every cookbook you make, especially if your cookbook isn't designed for the public supermarket or other community members. Private cookbooks often follow different conventions than public ones. Private cookbooks use techniques that are effective in specific environments, while public cookbooks should use techniques that do not hinder reuse across a variety of environments.
They are also a product of community feedback. That's very important. Chef, the company, does not want to dictate to you how the sausage must be made. So these opinions are suggested, discussed, and agreed upon by the chef community at large, and then implemented as something that the supermarket can run. And we can get into how that discussion plays out a little bit later.
But also, they're awesome. Well, I think improving the quality of cookbooks and surfacing great cookbooks is totally awesome.
It's pretty awesome. All right, so let's get into it.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
All right.
You said you wanted community input.
I did say that.
I can't emphasize how much we want your guys' feedback. So right now, pull out your phones, go into the community Slack, and join this channel on the screen, Pound Cookbook Tech Design. This is our new Designing Cookbooks channel that used to be Cookbook Engineering. But if you have any ideas or thoughts or want to add to the conversation that we're having right here, right now, this is where you guys can add to it while we're talking right now. If we have a bit of time at the end, we'd like to try to maybe pull it up on our phones, and we might be able to talk about some of the things here and stuff like that.
But we were told we only had 20 minutes, so we'll see how it goes.
So how can you see them, right? You've probably already seen cookbook quality metrics, and you haven't even realized it.
It's a great UI win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But using the magic of screenshots to bypass conference Wi-Fi, let's open up the supermarket. Double click. So here we've searched for DNSimple. Check out the name, the version, and then that gauge right there. Look at that awesome 100% score.
Indeed, if both of these cookbooks in the search results did the same thing, I might lean towards looking at the 100%er first.
So now I'm going to double click and drill on in real quick to look at the actual cookbook page. You'll see along the README, dependencies, and changelog, there's that quality tab there. Now real quick, I'm going to click on that. And I've pulled up a list of the actual cookbook quality metrics we currently have right now. And we can see there's a lot of passes. You probably can't see or read this.
We sat back there earlier. It's hard
Yeah.
to see, but trust us.
So, Robb, can I test locally?
Kinda. Kinda. So many of the quality metrics only make sense in the context of supermarket. Supermarket has information about the cookbook, or it has achieved a state past it's been published. However, there is something that you can add to your test pipelines locally, and that is Food Critic.
Food Critic. So here's the Food Critic website. There's nothing super critic. I just wanted to see everyone that cool logo.
Cool logo.
Food Critic is a community-maintained linter for cookbooks. Passing Food Critic is one of the biggest and possibly one of the most important cookbook quality metrics out there. I'm good at talking today. It's the biggest hurdle by volume for you passing. But if you already pass and you use this, you're most of the way there, guys. If you don't, it's included in the Chef DK, so it's already on all of your developer workstations and possibly even in your pipeline for you to test with. So, Rob, what can't I test locally?
Well, everything else at the moment. As I said, some of them only make sense in the context of supermarket. Take, for example, there's a metric that a cookbook has been published, which might seem like a silly metric because if you're looking at it on the supermarket, it's been published to the supermarket. But published also covers two cases where possibly a cookbook owner has deprecated it, so the person who wrote the thing is telling you not to use the thing. Maybe don't do that. Also, if the cookbook is up for adoption, it's considered not fully published, so it would fail that metric. Another measure that many people care about are how many humans maintain a cookbook. How many individuals could publish a new version that would have either new features or bug fixes. Maybe you don't want to depend on a cookbook that is only maintained by one human.
I know I actually care a lot about the bus factor, as we like to call it, of the code that I run in my environments.
So some other measures that are based on the state of the released artifact. For example, it is cookbooks shouldn't contain any binaries, no executables or no tarballs, because it's pretty common firm guideline that the chef community has that cookbooks are not the means by which you deliver your installers, like as the actual artifact. Definitely not in community cookbooks. So there's a measure for that. Community also relies on being able to trace a released version of a cookbook to a point in time in the cookbook's code repository, so that if you have a problem with a particular version of a cookbook, you can trace it to the code at that point in time that it was released. You can take a look at tests. And so there is a matcher for, does this released cookbook have a tag that matches in the code repository?
Opinionated release tools like Stove can help ensure this is a part of your release process and make these kind of things easier. So that's what we have right now. But what else is there? Before I continue to read the rest of these off, I want to take a moment and remind everyone these are in discussion and not solidified yet. So put the torches down. These are suggestions that we've collected from users and developers at our community summits all last year, as well as last ChefConf. These also only apply to community cookbooks. In fact, much of this advice, at least some of it, does not apply to internal or private cookbooks. In fact, you should probably do the opposite. Some of the things that we're looking to encourage, this is a wall of text, I'm going to read it, don't worry, is cook style usage. We don't currently check for this, but it's starting to become more and more a standard to use the Rubocop wrapper for cook style to start doing linting, keep consistent code styles. Public, widely used code, maintainable code, readable code.
Consistency breeds maintainability.
Oh, yeah. Integration testing for all recipes. We totally would love to know how to do this. But if we have integration tests for all the recipes in a community cookbook, we know it's going to be less likely for regressions and other things like that. We'd also love to see test cookbooks for all custom resources. What's the best way to test a custom resource? Implement it. Make sure all edges are good. Again, things that we haven't quite figured out how we would test for. Another thing is all resource attributes and recipes in README. Save a lot of code splunking if I knew exactly what your cookbook did without having to read the entire thing. Chef 14 has some awesome doc generation, which will be helpful for generating documentation for your custom resources. It's still really new, but it's also really awesome. This one, all PowerShell, bash, and executes having guards. This is near and dear to my heart. If you don't put a guard on your executes, they stop being idempotent right then and right there, and it's going to run every time. That doesn't always do good stuff to my code.
My shell's not idempotent.
Neither is mine, even though fish is pretty good.
Please don't put fish. No. No.
Also, this one's kind of near and dear to my heart, but there's a lot of people still talking about it, is using custom resources over recipes. This makes your cookbook extremely compostable because instead of having to pull in a recipe with all of your opinions and setups, I can just grab the pieces and the parts that I want. Maybe I want my own config file set up or anything like that. It kind of gives it a bit more
makes it composable.
Then there's some of the stuff that we're looking to discourage. And again, some of these you definitely need to do in your private cookbooks. Node attribute usage and templates. This essentially is you making a node attribute a global to a template, which makes it really hard to find where it was set and where it's being used. Having a large amount of cookbook dependencies is also problematic in community cookbooks. If I have to pull in 100 other cookbooks to pull in your cookbook, that's going to make me want to use it a lot less, I'm not going to lie. That's a lot of extra code that I'm buying into just to use your cookbook. The other one, and this one has burned me so many times, is pinning dependencies in community cookbooks. Please pin dependencies in your wrappers. Please don't pin the ones that you upload to Supermarket. This can cause lots of super fun version conflicts when my pins don't agree with your pins. And then finally, using attribute levels other than normal in your community cookbook is going to make it super hard for me to override that. Last I checked, we don't yet have node mother may I.
Yeah, please, mother may I override this override. We could add that to the table if you want. Community feedback's welcome. It'll probably get downvoted. All right, so these things are in discussion, as we had discussed.
Yeah.
So how would you add new rules? Well, first thing you should consider is be a critic. See if the new rule, the idea, the measure that you have in your head could be implemented as a food critic rule. Food critic is a complicated beast, and we only have 20 minutes. Scratch that, 10. So we're not going to go into how to do that here, but there's help available in the READMEs, there's documentation, there's helpful people in the community that can help you out with that. So information's out there, and it's doable. Might not be pretty, but it's doable. But sometimes a metric doesn't fit well as a food critic rule. So that's a case where we have an RFC process to talk about where it might be better implemented. Or maybe you have no idea how to implement it, and you just want to talk about, you've got an idea about a measure of quality, and you can get other people involved in figuring out how to implement it. For that, we have the Chef Cookbooks GitHub organization is where most of the chef-maintained community cookbooks exist. And in it, we have a repository called Cookbook Quality Metrics. That is our RFC repo for talking about where and how and which metrics to implement. There is a template in here that gives you a little skeleton of things that you should suggest. Give it a name, write some words about why you think that this measure is valuable. And the part that most of the people in the room can't see because it's below the fold of people's heads here is a verification block where you suggest how we can teach computers how to do this measure. So some pseudocode or real code that can do the measurement for us.
Not that kind of pseudocode I can drive a truck through. I mean, like, is bad, then fail. That's good, right?
It's a place to start,
but
we ought to define those terms.
Okay.
Otherwise, robots are like, what?
I thought you were actually going to verify all of these.
Nope, not going to do that.
Nope.
No. I don't scale either.
No, you're not going to verify?
No, I'm a sysadmin. I write code so that I don't have to do that anymore.
Nope. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, no, I'm not going to hand verify your code.
Nell's not going to do it either. Not going to do it.
But we're going to need some good pseudocode.
If you start with a pseudocode that you drive trucks through, we can have a conversation about it.
So, your input. This is the whole reason we're actually having this talk. Yep. This was all a trap to get you in this room.
It's a trap.
Yeah. So that we could solicit feedback about what metrics actually matter to you guys right here, right now. We'd also love to know how you guys feel about how we're currently displaying it and showing it in the supermarket. Is the percentage thing kind of weird? Could we make it bigger and brighter and red and green and take over the whole screen? Or
I know people who know CSS.
Yeah, I mean, like, we could probably do like a blink tag. Are those still allowed? No, I mean, but we just want to know how we can make these better for everyone and help surface cookbooks and isolate and find problems so that we can help start working on them and make the supermarket and all the cookbooks on it much better.
Yep.
So, bam.
Bam.
Cookbook design.
We have a lot of people who have joined, but apparently they've been listening to us instead of having ideas that they typed at least.
Well,
that's okay.
Okay. That's fine.
Oh, I see somebody's typing.
Uh-oh, someone's typing.
This is super exciting, especially for the recording.
I know who's typing because
Yep.
I'm looking at the person who is typing.
Yep. Several people are typing. Oh, drama.
Uh-oh. It's so exciting.
Hello, Joe. Food Critic has a supermarket tag. Yes, good point from the Martini Soft. Food Critic is something that if you want to run sort of supermarket flavored critics, there's a tag that you could say, please tell me if this cookbook would pass on the supermarket rules. Not all of the supermarket rules, not all of the metrics, but we have tagging in Food Critic so that you can pick whether you're testing against community cookbook rules or private cookbook rules, or you don't care about this one particular thing, like licensing. There's a licensing check. Maybe you're fine with proprietary licensing because it's your cookbook that you only use in your company. That's fine. So Food Critic's pretty flexible in having a rule set that you can customize what gets run.
And not posting all rights reserved cookbooks to the supermarket, generally a good idea.
Yeah, that one's you're gonna get flagged.
We would have to have a talk.
Yeah.
About
if you're sharing an all rights reserved cookbook in the supermarket, nobody can use it. Well, somebody might be, but they ought not to.
All right, I think. Is there still drama?
Your hat got a compliment.
Oh,
Yep.
awesome. Thank
Yep.
you very much. Okay.
Yep.
Rep it. Rep it. I probably should have done that. Anyway.
Yeah, now we have to blur out the brand, and
It's on the
it's on the back. Don't turn around. And you're dancing. All right. I don't see any more drama typing, so I think that'll wrap it. We're pretty much at time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.